Buddy, in this video, I'm going to talk about the keys to weight loss and to actually getting all the way to your goal weight. So there's some things that I've found kind of along my own journey that really stand out that are more important than other things. These would be things like consistency. So, we can get frustrated, we can kind of fall off track along the way. And consistency is kind of how you make that big transformation. Consistency is how people get all the way to their goal weight. Not just losing a bit of weight, but actually making this a lifestyle and getting all the way there to the end goal. Where I've been able to get to, I've been over 260 pounds before. I stopped weighing myself at 260, and I've been able to stay at about 180 to 185 pounds, as low as in the 170s. Did I say 280? So 180, 170, 185, kind of in that range for about 2 years now. Consistent. And I'm going to try to give you guys a lot of helpful information in this video. It's probably going to be another maybe 10 minutes long or so. There's a few things that, I get asked sometimes when I don't have a lot of time, people that are willing to try anything, or they want tips, or they want some help. And consistency is definitely one of them. Also, if I had to put it into a nutshell, what my whole 30-day program is and, what we're doing in here, that would be to have foods that are lower in calories, that are very satiating, so very filling, very low in carbohydrates that will put you into ketosis, and the calorie part is going to be low in calories to keep you in a calorie deficit to consistently lose weight. But this has to happen day in, day out. It's not really a race, it's not really a sprint. You're really trying to do this long term. So I'm going to actually talk first a little bit about satiety. So the reason why satiety is so important is that if you're not full, if you're not feeling like you can go a good amount of time in between meals where you feel satiated and satisfied, then you're kind of beat, because your willpower will eventually run out. You only have so much willpower to make those good decisions consistently. And if you have foods that are filling you up and making you completely full and satisfied, it makes things so much easier. So that's why, in here and in my 30-day keto camp program, we really focus on whole foods. Whole foods meaning, if I'm going to put it into a nutshell, would be meats, eggs, seafood, and optionally green vegetables or non-starchy vegetables. Another way to say that would be above ground vegetables. That would be things like broccoli and cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, lettuce, kale, spinach, arugula, a lot of the greens, a lot of things that like the mixed salads. All those things are really, really good, really, really low in carbs, really low in calories, and they have lots of fibers, so they're going to help fill you up, keep you satiated longer, because they are pretty slow to digest. I say they're optional because some people that have some digestional issues, or they are trying to break that carb addiction or that sugar addiction, they're better off just cutting it out completely. So as far as the foods go, high satiety foods, I'm going to give you guys a few real life examples right now. So that would be things like salmon, that would be things like eggs. Eggs are very hard to overeat. So you think about 5 eggs, that's 300 calories. Or let's do 7 eggs, that's 420 calories. 7 eggs at one time is going to really fill most people up. They're going to be very full, very satisfied. You're going to be able to go 4 or 5 hours before having to have another meal on 400 calories for one meal. If you're doing 2 meals a day, you're in a deep calorie deficit. You're burning fat like crazy, your own body fat. So it's important to find these foods that you actually enjoy. Not everybody likes salmon, and I understand that, but it tends to be the real whole foods like steak, for example, pork chops. When you're doing higher protein foods and whole foods in their original form without much processing, those foods are just very filling. So if you can focus on those whole foods, it's going to go a long way to get you results consistently, without really having to track calories. In here, I do have exact portion sizes because calories do matter. But when you stick to the right foods that aren't easy to overeat, like a lot of oils and butter, cream cheese, for example, a lot of the cheeses are easy to overeat, nut flours, roasted nuts. And those are a lot of the foods that we really enjoy, and we almost enjoy them too much because they're like we keep going back to them, we can keep eating them. Just very easy to overconsume calories. So the next thing I want to talk about too is the whole addiction cycle of carbohydrates. So a lot of people end up using carbs and sugar and especially carbs and fat together to treat themselves for things like anxiety and depression and stress. Anytime life throws you a curveball and you're feeling very, very stressed, a lot of people turn to something like ice cream. It's usually not just carbohydrates, and I know that's where the carbohydrates are what cause the damage, but it's more the carbohydrates and the fats together. So processed carbohydrates and processed fats, when you combine those two things, it ends up being our favorite foods that are very, very easy to overeat. And I'm going to get into that a little bit right now. So, when you're feeling stressed, just think about how many times you see on the movies or in real life where people go through a breakup or there's a death in the family or something, and you turn to those comfort foods. Those comfort foods are very addictive foods. They actually light up our reward system. They increase dopamine. They increase serotonin, which is our pleasure center. So they actually make us feel better. They make us feel less stressed, and we're using them more as a drug than a food, right? We're using those things to make us feel better. So it's very important to replace that with something else that's actually not going to cause harm. And I'm going to give a couple examples of those feel-good comfort foods, and I know that they could be trigger foods. People would call these trigger foods, and there's a good reason. They are very addictive. They are more like a drug. Things like ice cream, right? Ice cream is literally just sugar and fat together. Really good example. So pizza, right? Pizza is a hugely popular food and often leads to obesity. Again, right? It's carbohydrates in the wheat and the bread, and then packed with cheese, all kinds of fat on it as well, usually, or bacon crumble. And bacon is good on its own, but you combine it with some wheat, suddenly it's a problem food. So those are a lot of the comfort foods. And there's a very good reason for them. We turn to them and they do work. They make us feel better for a very, very short time. But what also happens when you have those comfort foods with fat and carbohydrates together is that you get this big insulin response from the carbohydrates, and then which you also get a big blood sugar response first. So your blood glucose goes up, and then it's followed by your insulin. Insulin drives down your blood sugar, and you get hungry again. The other thing, so then you're eating a lot more often. You're eating every couple of hours, not like what we're doing. We're only eating twice a day, 4 to 6 hours apart. And so you're not only eating more often, but you're eating more food. And it's just easier to overeat those things. You don't get full from them. You don't get satiated. So going back to the satiety, those foods are just, it's easy to sit down and have 1,000 calories, 2,000 calories in one sitting. Doritos would be another really good example of that. Anything that's French fries would be another one. So that's deep fried potatoes. That's starch, which is a carbohydrate, and then fat. Now, here's the other thing with that. So not only does it drive insulin up and put you into more of a fat storing mode where it's lipolysis is shut off, so you're unable to tap into your own body fat for several hours. So that's another reason why you get hungry after having those foods. And the other problem with them is, so the carbohydrates that you're eating, you will burn those for fuel. You'll burn carbs for fuel, and all that fat, you are primed right now with the higher insulin to store that fat. So you burn glucose. There's something called oxidative priority, so which means certain foods get burnt and used as fuel first. Carbohydrates is way above fat. So all the fat that you're eating will actually get stored as body fat. So it's not necessarily the carbs that are the problem in that case. The carbohydrates aren't getting really stored as fat, but what they are doing is they provide your body with fuel. So it provides your brain with glucose. You use so much a day. It's going to fill your liver store. glycogen, so that's another form of glucose, sugar again, and inside your muscles. So there's a couple thousand calories there or more that you're actually able to hold on to with glucose. So there's lots of storage room there. And you're also going to be using that glucose that you're eating, or those carbohydrates, for the fuel. Pretty much all of that fat that you're eating is going to get stored as body fat. And the other part of the problem is that you're hungry again, like I said, after a short period of time. And a good example of this is something I can still remember. So just before I was getting married, I was near my heaviest weight. It was very stressful. We were planning all these different things, spending all kinds of money. And like I think for both of us, for my wife and I, it was fairly stressful having to do all these drives and stuff. So we were eating a lot of fast food at the time. We were on the road, and we would eat. We'd go to McDonald's, and we would have a Big Mac and some French fries and a Coke, which is probably 800, 1,000 calories or more. And I remember driving to the one of the places we were going to. It was 2 hours away, maybe even an hour and 45 minutes. And we ate before we left. And by the time we got down there, we were starving again. Now, partly stress response, wanting to eat, wanting those carbs, wanting to self-medicate. But the other thing is, that whole blood sugar going up and coming back down and crashing. So then you're hungry after a short period of time. If I had filled up on 6 eggs, or for 1,000 calories worth, I could have 10 eggs and 10 pieces of bacon, for example. I would have been good for the entire day, especially if I was in ketosis and fat adapted, which ends up meaning that I eat a lot less overall. So that fat and carb combination, you guys definitely need to avoid it. You want to keep your carbohydrates as low as possible. And there's some people that really do have to use abstinence, especially when you start looking at carbohydrates from the addiction model, and you look at carbohydrates and sugar as more of a drug than a food. It starts to really make sense that that works so well for people, why carnivore works so well for people. We do have a carnivore menu on our 30-day keto camp, and people do it and they have a lot of success. It really helps them get off the carbohydrates, really takes away their cravings, puts them deeply into ketosis, and they're basically using abstinence. So if you think about an alcoholic, for example, you're not going to tell an alcoholic just to have less beers, right? If somebody was drinking or 40 ounces of whiskey a day, you're not going to say just have a couple shots, because that's not what's going to happen. You do build an extreme tolerance over time, and the same thing happens with carbohydrates and sugar. You actually need to have more to have that same feel-good thing. So the whole comfort food, you'll need more and more. It's the same with the alcoholic. They build up a tolerance over time, and it becomes an addiction to the point where they can't just have one beer. They can't just have one shot of alcohol. And they're doing self-harm. And we're really good at justifying, why we do it. When you're an addict and you're addicted, like I am, I'm definitely addicted to carbohydrates. So I really have to eliminate them pretty much completely. I can't just have a little bit of carbohydrates, because it brings my hunger back up. I start using that again to make me feel better, becomes my medicine. It's very easy, it's very simple, it's very available. You can get carbohydrates anywhere, right? I could walk 5 minutes from my house right now and buy a loaf of bread or cookies. There's a bakery nearby. I mean, it's so accessible and easy to get these foods that act more like a drug that it's just ridiculous how easy it is. And they're problem foods. They're actually doing damage. And I'm not really going to get into all the health detriments, the detrimental effects of carbohydrates right now, but it does lead to inflammation. It leads to obesity. It leads to metabolic disease. And all those things are caused by just the simple fact that it ends up making us overeat calories. That's by far the biggest part, because we're eating more often. We're eating more because of that tolerance effect that happens, right? We need more of that food. Suddenly one little piece of cake is not going to work anymore. One little piece of pizza is not going to work. We need the whole pizza. That happens to people. That happened to me. I got to the point where I could eat a whole pizza, no problem. I could eat 10 pieces of pizza. I would not have a normal portion of ice cream, right? You see people having these tiny little dishes of ice cream. That's their little dessert, still being able to be thin. And some people can do that. For me, the small, maybe it did start off as a small portion, but after a while it was the entire tub. And again, that was because it was my drug and I was going through a stressful time in my life as a teenager, and it just kind of escalated and kept, happening over and over, where I was using those things like chips and popcorn and pizza and French fries, a lot of candy. I really didn't have the supervision or no one to tell me not to do it. So any money that I had, um, or got by whatever means, it was always spent on sugary foods and the carb and fat combination. And it just became my drug of choice. And that was day in, day out, every couple hours, I would be having that, have the crash. I remember being really, really tired at school, falling asleep, being hungry all the time. And that's basically the cycle that people get into when they're having the carb and fat combination. So hopefully you guys found this a little bit helpful. And I kind of covered what you do want to do, which is whole foods. You stick to those whole foods. It's really hard to overeat them. You're breaking out of that addiction cycle, um, which whole foods are generally going to be made up of fat and protein. So I'm talking about mostly animal foods. And if you're a big fan of having vegetables, I mean, there's still lots of vegetables that you can have. You could have all kinds of broccoli and cauliflower, a lot of the greens. You could have asparagus and Brussels sprouts. So there are a lot of different vegetables that you can have, that shouldn't be a problem for most people. I've just come to the place where, it's easier for me not to have to guess portion sizes of carbs. Like even cauliflower or different vegetable sources of carbohydrates, to have to track those all the time and stay under my personal carbohydrate threshold to stay in ketosis. Because if I just go a little bit too much, I find I'm quickly hungry again. I'm quickly ravenous. I want more and more carbohydrates. Suddenly those French fries look really good to me that someone beside me might be eating. The pizza looks amazing. And normally I'm in complete control of my eating, and those foods do not bother me. I walk through a bakery and I really just don't like the smell. But if I had some carbohydrates, then all of a sudden that stuff looks really good to me. My brain lights up, and you get kind of pulled back into that addiction part of it, where you want that stuff. And once you start having it, I'm sure a lot of you guys know, and that's why it's important to really, really try not to cheat on keto. It's kind of an all or nothing approach. Now, I do want to explain what I mean by that. It's just easier to look at things and just look at it not even as a food. I can't have that. That's poison to me. And I know that sounds extreme, but it's easier to have things black and white. I don't eat that stuff. I'm not eating that stuff. I know how I feel when I do. Then try to get portions. Like for some people, that's definitely the way to go, is just to eliminate carbohydrates completely. And that's why carnivore is life-changing for so many people. Hopefully I'm not rambling too much. Hopefully all this kind of made sense to you guys. So consistency, very important. High satiety foods. Find the ones that you enjoy that fill you up on fewer calories. Again, fish, chicken. It's going to be all animal meats for the most part, and you can put in some veg, like I said. And eggs are always very filling. Eggs are always a really good choice, high in nutrients, high in protein. They have a really good protein and fat balance. Bacon is also really good. So many different choices, and the steaks and all the whole foods in their whole form are the most filling foods. So find those foods, eat them as often as you can. Every single meal you have that's going to be high satiety, lower calorie, those are really benefiting you. You're going to burn more body fat every single time you can make that choice. And when you get into the habit of eating certain meals over and over again, like on our program, and sticking to that exactly, not cheating on the weekends, you'll do amazingly well. And since I mentioned cheating and I mentioned kind of all or nothing and all that, I do want to be very clear. That's all part of it. Everybody cheats. Everybody falls off the wagon. Everybody struggles at times. And, I know that people know me as the bacon man, and bacon has always been my thing, but there's a really good reason for that. So bacon is zero carbohydrates, or you can find zero carbohydrate bacon. Bacon is high in salt, high in sodium. So bacon is a really, really good way to get back into ketosis. After you've cheated, A lot of people try to fast, right? They try to do a 24-hour fast or a 36-hour fast or whatever to get back into ketosis. I really don't recommend it because it takes a lot of willpower. It's very difficult. There's a good chance you're going to fail, and then you're going to feel even worse. I'm telling you that go with zero carb foods, go with carnivore, go with bacon and eggs, or just bacon. If you did 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds of uncooked bacon every day for 3 days and didn't really have much else, you'll be back into ketosis. You've gotten all the salt that you need, so you will not have the keto flu. You'll feel amazing, and you'll be right back on track. You'll be in control of your eating again, and that's what keto is all about. It's about being full, not being hungry all the time, and getting that control back, taking the control back of your eating. That's what keto does for people. That's why it's so life-changing. And doing that consistently over time means you're eating less consistently over time, and you're burning your own body fat for a fuel source day in and day out. And that's how people lose 100 pounds. They lose 140 pounds. I have clients that are now down way more than I am. Quite a few that are down 120, 130, 100, and I know there's at least one that's down 140 pounds, which is just mind-blowing to me. That's a whole person, and these people do weigh that now. Like, they weigh less than what they've lost. Some of them have lost 120, 130 pounds, and that's about what they weigh now, 120 something. So it's incredible what can happen once you get control of your eating, once you figure out those foods that are just going to consistently, day in, day out, keep you full, keep you satisfied, keep you on track in ketosis, your mind clear, your blood sugar even, having even energy. There's so many benefits of doing it that it just pays off. I don't do keto because I hate ice cream. I don't do keto because I hate pizza. You know, if I could have those foods and it wouldn't affect me negatively, if it wouldn't give me brain fog, diabetes, obesity, I would have them all the time, but they do. There's a penalty, there's a price for those foods, for that really short-term enjoyment, for that short-term dopamine hit, serotonin hit, makes you feel good for a very short time, then you feel like crap. Then you beat yourself up. Then you're back into that cycle. You're eating more to feel better again. You know, keto and carnivore is the perfect way to get out of that, to break free of it. And the other part of that is support. And that's why I do my Keto Camp support group, because after I had, you know, fixed myself, basically, got control of my eating, lost all the weight, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I wanted to tell other people. I wanted to help other people. I wanted to reach my hand out, pull other people up on top of the mountain, because it seemed like a mountain. It was so hard to get here. So I'm almost getting a little bit emotional about it, because I know it's difficult, and I struggled my whole life. Like, since I was 13 years old, I struggled with obesity. I would lose some weight sometimes, 50, 60 pounds sometimes. I'd be going for a walk every day for, 5 miles a day, eating low fat, eating low calorie, but it was never sustainable. I tried all the different programs, was never sustainable. Keto has given me my life back, and I know it can give you your life back. It can put you in control, and allow you to do this, but it takes time. It really does take a lifestyle change. You really have to commit to it. But it does work. There's been nothing else that's worked even close to as good as keto, and there's so many good foods, right? Like, in our Keto Camp program, we've done 140 different meal options now, with really good macros that put you into ketosis, that put you into calorie deficit. You'll keep losing weight, and they taste amazing, right? There's coconut curry chicken, and like, you guys have got some samples on some of the stuff that's in this menu. In the 30-day program, we've really extended it. There's more than 10 times the amount of food in it, and then it suddenly becomes doable as a lifestyle long term, because you're not deprived, you don't feel hungry, you do feel good all the time, you feel very mentally clear, your energy's always good, you're able to concentrate, you're able to be more productive, you know that you're adding years to your life. So many benefits of keto. So I'm still so excited about it, and even though I've been doing this for 6 years, and now for me, helping other people is what keeps me on track. And I see it now, day in, day out. I've been able to help thousands of people. So I've seen people reverse their diabetes, like, all the time that happens. And I see these huge weight losses that people have. And the really big ones, the really big transformations, that always comes down to consistency. So I'm going to leave you guys with all that, a lot to digest. Maybe watch this video twice, because there's a lot of tidbits in there, And all these things really do work. They really do add up. The way we do the program with the intermittent fasting, doing the 2 meals, sticking to the whole foods, all these things really stack together to make it a lot easier um, for long-term success. And that's what I want for you. I want long-term success. I want you to be able to get to your goal weight. I want you to be able to reduce your risk of all these chronic diseases I was just talking about. And there's so many more on top of it that are all diet related. They're all related to, blood sugar and insulin. So I want the best for you guys, and hopefully, you're learning something from this 10-day course. And I would love for you guys to join us in our 30-day program. And I'll probably talk about that a little bit more on the next video. I'll just show you guys and prove to you guys how good this can work if you make it a lifestyle. I'm going to show you guys some client results and what I've been doing for people for the past 2 or 3 years, because it's been a few years of me doing this, helping people, and it's been thousands of people. So I'm just going to give you guys a few examples, and I'm going to talk more about my Keto Camp program. I hope you guys tune into it, and believe me, it's really life-changing, and it's hard to believe for the price that we're putting it at. That it can be that powerful and that effective. But the reason we're doing that is because I want to help a lot of people. I don't want to just help a dozen people. I want to help hundreds of people and maybe thousands of people. That's my goal, is to help a huge amount of people. I know the struggle, and now I have a lot of people that I've helped that have actually got to their goal weight. They're now in the groups with me, helping other people as well, and that helps them stay on track. So, if everybody that I'm helping is helping a whole bunch of people, and those people end up helping a bunch of people, just think of what that does. I don't want to get too into changing the world and all that, but it really is. It really is doing that. So I hope you participate. I hope you get to your goal weight, and then I hope you help other people, because this stuff really does work. It's very, very powerful. I must have tried 100 different ways to lose weight, including vegan diets and vegetarian and WW and all the paid stuff, all the paid things that you see, the commercials. I've tried all that stuff. A lot of different programs we found online, a lot of different methods of weight loss, going low fat, and all of it. And some of them have lost weight for me or helped me lose weight temporarily. Nothing's been sustainable. I've been able to maintain my goal weight now for 3 years. That's crazy to me. Like, I could only ever get to a certain weight for about a day or so. And then I would start putting it all back on, and I would end up heavier than I was where I started. And I mean, I worked hard to get there. But it always took willpower. Keto, I look at it as totally different. Especially when you take all these different pieces from all these different things that help keep you full, that help control your hunger, help to control the cravings, get out of that addiction cycle where you're using food as a drug. When you break free of all that, finally, it really is like the sky opens up and things kind of, the light's shining down, and it does become a lot easier, and you get very excited once you realize this is actually going to work. Finally, this is going to work. I can enjoy my food. I'm not eating rabbit food day in, day out. I'm eating bacon wrapped burgers. I'm eating beanless chili. You're eating steaks. You're eating chicken. You're eating shrimp, like all the stuff that you probably really like and enjoy. And one last thing I want to say, some of those things I just mentioned are very expensive. Keto can also be made very affordable and on a budget. So that's why we cover so much of a range. There's things that might cost $30 for a meal, like if you're having a lobster or a filet mignon, and there's things that would cost $2 for a meal if you're having some eggs and some bacon, or something like pork loin or ground beef. Those meals can be very, very affordable, so it doesn't have to be expensive either. So there's really no reason at all, no matter where you are financially, where you are in your weight loss journey, why this can't work for you. So anyways, guys, that's all I wanted to say. Hopefully I've motivated you just a little bit. Hopefully I've given you some things to try and think about. But what I do want to relay more than anything is that keto does work, and there is hope, and it doesn't matter if you have 200 pounds to lose, because even that's possible. 300 pounds to lose, it doesn't matter. It's still possible. I have a friend that dropped 200 pounds in 16 months doing keto, and actually ended up going carnivore for most of that, where he was just eating animal food. So there's always something more you can do. There's always things that you can adjust to get better results. And I really believe that every single person watching this video can get all the way to their goal weight and finally feel in control and finally feel comfortable in their own body like I do now.